He was unpredictable, he was unstable, and he was just downright despicable. But when the Chicago outfit needed torture, silence, or terror, they turned to Mad Sam, a psychopath with a Bible in one hand and a cattle prod in the other. This is a story of the mob's necessary evil, the man the mob used until he became too dangerous to keep alive. Welcome back to James on the Mob. I'm James Jenkins, your host and narrator. In this episode, we go from clowning, our last episode, to crazy. And in the blood-soaked annals of American organized crime, few figures evoke the same visceral horror as Mad Sam DeStefano. While the Chicago outfit produced a litany of ruthless killers and formidable bosses, DeStefano occupied a unique and terrifying niche. He was not merely a gangster. He was a force of pure, unadulterated sadism, a man whose capacity for cruelty was so profound that it set him apart even from the most hardened criminals. This distinction was not lost on those tasked with policing the mob. Veteran FBI agents, such as William F. Romer Jr., who had spent their careers tracking the outfit's most violent men, held a chilling consensus. Sam DeStefano was the single worst organized crime torture murder in United States history. The genesis of Sam DeStefano's violent trajectory can be traced back to his early life, a journey that took his family from the immigrant dream to the heart of Chicago's criminal crucible. Born on September 13, 1909, in Streator, Illinois, he was the son of Italian immigrants, Samuel Sr. and Rosalie DeStefano, who had arrived in America in 1903. The family soon moved to the volatile coal mining town of Herrin, Illinois, a community scarred by labor violence, like the Herrin Massacre. The Herrin Massacre took place on June 22, 1922, during a nationwide strike by the United Mine Workers of America. Although the owner of the mine had originally agreed with the union to observe the strike, when the price of coal went up, he hired non-union workers to produce and ship out the coal. Enraged that the owner had disregarded their agreement, on June 21st, union miners shot at strikebreakers going to work, where the mine had armed guards. When the striking union members armed themselves and laid siege to the mine, the owner's guards shot and killed 3 union miners in an exchange of gunfire. The next day, union miners killed a mine superintendent and 18 of 50 strikebreakers and mine guards, many of them brutally. A 20th victim from the non-union group was later murdered, bringing the death total to 23. This environment of brutal conflict was a formative backdrop before the family ultimately relocated to the dense, tribal world of Chicago's Little Italy, around Taylor and Western Avenues. DeStefano's entry into the criminal underworld was not gradual. It was swift and severe. By the age of 17, he was already a known quantity to law enforcement. In November 1927, he and an associate stood trial for the brutal assault of a 17-year-old girl who testified she had been forced into a car and sexually assaulted by 7 men in a garage. The resulting conviction for rape earned him a 3-year prison sentence. The only reason it was 3 versus the 7 years that the other defendants got was that he had not gotten a chance to physically rape her. This early heinous crime was a defining moment. In later years, DeStefano would construct a grandiose narrative around this event, claiming he had been framed and that the conviction had derailed a promising political career that could have led him to the White House. This revisionist history offers a clear window into his psyche, a blend of extreme narcissism, a complete inability to accept responsibility for his actions, and a delusional sense of his own potential. Upon his release, he formalized his criminal education by joining the notorious 42 gang in 1930. This infamous street crew served as a farm team for the Chicago outfit, and it was here that DeStefano forged the most critical alliance of his life with its ambitious leader, Salvador Sam Giancana. Together, they immersed themselves in the rackets of bootlegging and gambling. DeStefano's penchant for violence quickly became apparent. In 1932, he was wounded by a policeman during a grocery store robbery. A more significant setback came in 1933, when he was convicted of a bank robbery in Wisconsin and handed a formidable 40-year prison sentence. But a political fix must have got put in, because within 8 years, his sentence was commuted by the governor of Wisconsin, Julius Hyle, in December of 1942, and he was released in December of 1944. DeStefano, however, returned to prison in June 1947 for possessing counterfeit sugar ration stamps. And what should have been a career-ending incarceration proved to be the single most important networking opportunity of his life. During his time in Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary, DeStefano was not just another inmate. He was a student in a master class of high-level mob politics. It was there that he met and cultivated relationships with two of the outfit's most powerful and respected leaders, Paul the Waiter Rica and Louis Little New York Campagna. This connection, forged in the confines of a federal prison, would become his ultimate shield. Years later, when DeStefano's crew operated with a remarkable degree of autonomy, it was this prison-born relationship with Rica that provided him with top-level protection. This direct line to the outfit's ruling echelon allowed him to bypass layers of hierarchy and explains more than any other factor why his extreme and often compromising behavior was tolerated for so long. He wasn't just another earner, he was Rica's man, and that distinction granted him a unique and powerful immunity that would last for decades. After his release from prison, Sam DeStefano applied his criminal acumen to a racket that would become his signature: loan sharking, or juice loans. With capital acquired from his days as a bank robber and Rica provided outfit cash, he, along with his brother Mario, established one of the earliest and most dominant loan sharking operations in Chicago. By the 1950s, he had built a multi-million-dollar empire founded on usury and terror, becoming one of the city's most prominent and feared loan sharks. The mechanics of his operation were a masterclass in symbiotic criminality. The interest rates were predatory, typically running between 20 and 25% per week. His clientele was strategically spread. On one hand, he lent money to professionals, including lawyers and politicians, which fed directly into his secondary racket of political and judicial fixing. DeStefano boasted that there wasn't any case he couldn't fix, and he offered a sliding scale of fees for his services: $800 for a robbery case, $1,500 for assault, and a rumored $20,000 to fix a first-degree murder charge. This system created its own self-perpetuating cycle of victims. Corrupt police officers would escort suspects directly to DeStefano's home, where after a payoff, the accused would be put on the juice, indebted to DeStefano in exchange for their freedom. To legitimize his income and fund these bribes, he invested in real estate, purchasing a 24-suite apartment building whose rental income provided a clean cash flow. But the true horror of his business was reserved for his other clients. DeStefano deliberately sought out high-risk debtors, drug addicts, and compulsive gamblers. He didn't want them to pay him back. He enjoyed it when they failed. For Mad Sam, a defaulted loan wasn't a business loss. It was a license to torture. This fundamentally distinguished his business model from that of other loan sharks. For a typical mob Shylock, violence is a tool used to compel payment and maximize profit. For DeStefano, the loan was the tool used to acquire a victim. His operation was not merely a financial enterprise, but a meticulously designed ecosystem for generating opportunities for torture. The juice he sought was not just the exorbitant interest, it was the suffering of the victims. He had successfully monetized his own sadism, creating a business where the ultimate product was human anguish, with the immense profits he generated for himself and the outfit being a massive but secondary benefit. The dark heart of Sam DeStefano's empire was the soundproof torture chamber he constructed in the basement of his home at 1658 North Sayre Avenue in the Galewood neighborhood. It was in this subterranean space that his financial and sadistic pursuits converged, and where he earned his reputation as a connoisseur of cruelty. Fellow gangsters, men accustomed to extreme violence, reported that DeStefano would literally foam at the mouth as he inflicted pain on his victims, a physical manifestation of the ecstatic pleasure he derived from their suffering. His methods were not merely about collection or retribution. They were elaborate rituals of physical and psychological annihilation. This was where business and sadism became one. In 1955, even his own family wasn't safe. His younger brother, Michael, a drug addict, was found shot to death in the trunk of his car. It's been reported that Sam, after he killed his brother, bathed him and put a fresh suit on the body and placed him in the car trunk. Both Sam and Mario were questioned by police. Sam reportedly laughed hysterically while being questioned, but neither was ever charged. One of the most famous killings believed to have taken place in Mad Sam's torture chamber was that of Arthur Adler, 43, a one-time owner of the Trade Winds, a restaurant, nightclub on the glittering Rush Street Strip on the near north side. He vanished on January 20th, 1962, after leaving his West Side office. The year prior, Adler had testified before a grand jury investigating alleged infiltration by the Chicago outfit into the city's restaurant and nightclub business. He also owed money to Sam DeStefano. Adler was abducted at gunpoint and brought to DeStefano's house. He was beaten and tortured with an ice pick, but apparently suffered a heart attack in the process. His body was found by workers investigating a drain blockage stuffed in a sewer. 2 months later, on March 28, 1962, in front of 1625 North Neva, incidentally 2 blocks east of DeStefano's home. The case of a collector for DeStefano, Peter Capoletti, provides an even more chilling illustration of DeStefano's methods. Capoletti had collected $25,000 from a loan shark customer of DeStefano's, but instead of turning the money in, Capoletti decided to flee with the money. Not a very bright idea. DeStefano's men hunted him down and found him in Wisconsin, but brought him back. He was chained to a radiator and tortured for 3 days. The ordeal culminated in a grotesque spectacle. While a banquet was being held in the front of a restaurant, DeStefano had the severely burned Capoletti dragged into the dining area, naked. There, in front of everyone, he forced Capoletti's own family, who Sam had told would be reunited with their missing loved one, to urinate on him in unison, a final soul-crushing act of humiliation designed to obliterate his dignity. Capoletti's family was then forced to pay double the amount of what he had stole to secure his release. His violence could be triggered by the slightest provocation. In November 1963, after a real estate agent and juice loan collector named Leo Foreman had the temerity to physically eject him from his office during an argument, DeStefano's rage was absolute. Foreman was lured to the home of DeStefano's brother under the pretense of a truce and was brutally murdered. This would be the murder that led to DeStefano's downfall, but more on that in a minute. This need to orchestrate rituals of degradation extended beyond his business dealings and into his personal life, revealing a profound and perverse psychopathy. His home was lined with mirrors, and he would constantly watch his own reflection as he spoke to people, a sign of his extreme narcissism. He was described as breathtakingly volatile, capable of crying one moment and laughing the next. He engaged in bizarre acts of dominance, such as urinating in the coffee he served to visiting FBI agents, a secret he later revealed to their profound disgust. In one of the most disturbing reported incidents, he spotted a random man on the street, forced him into his car at gunpoint, and took him home. There, as a twisted punishment for some perceived slight from his wife, he forced a stranger and his own wife to have sex with each other. The victim was so traumatized by the event that he immediately went to the police to report it, fearing that he would be accused of rape. Despite being one of the Chicago outfit's most prodigious earners and enjoying the personal protection of his highest echelons, Sam DeStefano was never a made man. This seemingly paradoxical status was a direct result of his profound and undeniable mental instability. The leaders of the outfit, men who prized discipline and adherence to a strict code of silence, recognized that DeStefano's deranged mental state made him fundamentally untrustworthy. He was too erratic and unpredictable to be initiated into the secret society, as he could not be relied upon to hold the oath of omertà. To fully grasp the singularity of Sam DeStefano's evil, it is necessary to place him within the historical context of Chicago's most feared enforcers. While the organization was built on a foundation of violence, the nature of that violence evolved over time, and DeStefano represented a unique and disturbing paradigm. His brutality stands in stark contrast to that of a figure like the Prohibition-era killer Frank McErlane. Described by the Illinois Association for Criminal Justice as the most brutal gunman to ever pull a trigger in Chicago, McErlane was a force of nature, a merciless killer known for his pioneering use of the Thompson submachine gun and for his terrifying alcohol-fueled rages. He was a maximum danger when blackout drunk, a man who once murdered his common-law wife and her 2 dogs in a fit of drunken fury. McErlane's violence, while horrific and often indiscriminate, was a product of chaotic impulse and intoxication. DeStefano, by contrast, was cold, methodical, and driven by a clear-eyed pursuit of pleasure. He did not need to be drunk to be a monster. His monstrosity was his natural state. And if you're interested in that other maniac, Frank McErlane, I've done a separate video on this subject. Be sure to take a look. The final chapter of DeStefano's life was a spectacular implosion, a public descent into madness that forced the hand of the very organization that had protected him for decades. The catalyst for his downfall was his indictment in the 1973 decade-old murder of Leo Foreman. Facing a serious prison sentence alongside his brother Mario and a young ambitious protege, Tony Spilotro, DeStefano's survival instincts curdled into a bizarre and self-destructive courtroom strategy. Convinced that he could outwit the justice system by feigning insanity, DeStefano transformed the trial into a macabre circus. He abandoned any semblance of a conventional legal defense, opting instead for a theatrical performance of lunacy. He arrived at the courthouse in his pajamas, carried on a stretcher by his associates, and proceeded to disrupt the proceedings by shouting incoherently through a bullhorn. He dismissed his lawyers and demanded to represent himself, a move that gave him a platform for his rambling, nonsensical tirades. This public spectacle was the final straw for the outfit's leadership. While DeStefano may have believed he was putting on a convincing act, his performance was so extreme and so public that his bosses, including the notoriously pragmatic Tony Accardo, came to a different conclusion. Mad Sam was no longer faking it. They decided he was genuinely and uncontrollably demented. He had crossed the critical line, transforming himself from a shielded, high-earning asset into an unacceptable liability. His erratic behavior was not only jeopardizing his own defense, but also threatening to bring down his co-defendant Spilotro and his own brother with him. In the world of the outfit, there is no greater sin than endangering the organization for personal reasons. DeStefano, in his desperate attempt to save himself, had signed his own death warrant. With Sam DeStefano's courtroom antics having sealed his fate, the order came down from the highest level of the Chicago outfit. Boss Tony Accardo, the ultimate authority, gave the green light for the hit. And on April 14, 1973, the mob's most feared loan collector would have his own debt called in, payable in blood. The execution was carried out with cold efficiency characteristic of the outfit. DeStefano was lured with the idea that an informant in their case, Charles Cromaldi, had been found and that they were going to take care of that business. The designated meeting location was his own garage at the North Sayre Avenue address, a space that had likely served as an anteroom to his basement torture chamber, a a place of business and terror. Instead of his colleagues, he was met by his executioners, Spilatro and his own brother, Mario. He was shot at close range by Spilatro with a double-barrel shotgun, the first shot blowing off his left arm below the elbow, and the second shot penetrating his chest. The prime suspects in the murder of Mad Sam DeStefano were the very men whose freedom he had been jeopardizing in court: his brother and enforcer, Mario DeStefano, and his protege, Tony Spilatro. Though they were considered, and were, the most likely perpetrators by the police, they were never charged, a testament to the outfit's ability to police its own ranks and leave behind no actionable evidence. The murder of Sam DeStefano was more than a simple execution. It was a powerful and symbolic act of cleansing for the outfit. By having him killed in his own seat of power and by ordering his own brother and underling to carry out the sentence, the organization sent a multifaceted message. It efficiently eliminated a dangerous liability. It tested and confirmed the ultimate loyalty of his crew, proving that their allegiance was to the outfit hierarchy and not to the immediate crew chief. And it served as a chilling reminder to every member of the Chicago underworld that no one, no matter how powerful, wealthy, or feared, was untouchable. The hit was a masterstroke of brutal mob symbolism, turning DeStefano's own instruments of power, his home, his crew, his family, against him in a final, definitive act of organizational dominance. So goes the story of Mad Sam DeStefano. DeStefano represents a chilling case study in the symbiosis between individual psychopathy and organized criminality. He demonstrated that within the pragmatic, profit-driven machine of the modern mob, even the most extreme forms of human cruelty could be qualified, monetized, and deployed as a strategic asset. He is remembered not for what he built, but for the sheer horror he inflicted. A man whose boundless capacity for cruelty managed to shock a world already numb to violence, securing his place as one of the most terrifying figures in the dark history of American crime. And in the comments below, let me know your opinion of Mad Sam. I'm James Jenkins, and if you've enjoyed this story of the mob's Marquis de Sade, you know what to do. Break that like thumb, subscribe, and share. And stay tuned for another episode of James on the Mind. And remember, life is short, so don't wag it off. See yous.